And when you're looking to define fascism, do you think of it as an ideology or a movement? Does it have to include violence? What are your staples?
Well, first of all, I do think fascism is a term that's being thrown around. Whenever anybody disagrees with you, they're a fascist. And then if the teenage boy wants to drive the car and the father says, no, he's a fascist. And so there's really, it's just kind of a loose term. And I do work hard in the book to define it. It is not an ideology. I mean, communism is an ideology. It's based on a lot of writings that have to do with that and an explanation of an ideology. I think fascism is a tool. It is a method for getting power and exercising it over people. I do think that one way to define a fascist leader is somebody who identifies himself with a national group, a tribal large group, in order to exclude those that are not part of it, out of it, and take away their rights. And ultimately, a real fascist leader uses violence, a bully with an army. But it's basically this identification of and a real pushing the distinctions between one group and another.
And you call the book Fascism a Warning because you want to set off alarm bells. Which countries do you feel are in the grip of a new fascism in 2018?
Well, unfortunately, more than I had thought, frankly. When I wrote the book, I was writing about Hungary, which I know very well, and the part that happened, what Orban has been doing. I write about Poland because I'm very surprised at some of the things that have happened there in terms of pushing a very highly nationalist kind of discussion. Turkey just proved it last Sunday with another re-election of Erdogan. I think that Venezuela, Philippines is what I write about. I am concerned about what is happening in Italy, and I think that one has to keep watching. And I think that the issue is what is happening in those countries and why is it appealing to people to exacerbate the divisions and then really have a centralization of authority, have no respect for democratic institutions or the freedom of the press.
You wouldn't, at this point, call any of those countries fascist?
No, I would not. The only one I actually call fascist is North Korea.
And does there have to be an element, you talk of nationalism, of racism? Is that an important element in the movement itself?
Well, I think part of what's going on, and just to, with a little bit more depth here, the question is why are there divisions in society now? And by the way, I was going to write this book no matter who won, because I could see divisions taking place between the haves and have-nots, partially because the social contract has broken down. People join a society, give up some individual rights in order to have the government do certain things for them, and both sides had kind of let down the other. And so I was concerned about the divisions. I think that the aspect of it that really got me on this is that what it is, as I mentioned, the identification with a tribal group, frankly. And one of the things that I think I've talked about is that there's a mega trend, which is globalization, and a lot of people have benefited from it, but it has a downside. It's faceless. And so people actually want an identity, which is fine. We all want to know our linguistic, ethnic, religious identity, but if my identity hates your identity, patriotism turns into nationalism and hyper-nationalism, and that's very dangerous. So to just put the pieces together, the leader identifies with normally some national group at the exclusion of the other and then has to blame somebody for why the economy or whatever is not good, and it creates the scapegoat, which then leads to racism.
You will know very well, though, that there is a clever use of language when you talk to people like, I've interviewed Marine Le Pen in the past and Hungarian cabinet members recently, and they will describe what they are doing as a protection measure, as a way of helping their country, as a way of helping the people that have been left behind. And if you ever call them out on racism, there'll be a frank denial. There'll be a, don't criticize my country, don't call me xenophobic. Now, do you think we have not been sharp enough at calling that out, or do you think that we do have to take this sense of nationalism slightly more seriously now because it has been getting lost?
Well, I think part of what's happening, again, so many definitional aspects. I believe in patriotism. I think, you know, we're being dedicated to your country. However, if you decide that anybody that is not exactly like you is a threat, so that what you're seeing, for instance, in Hungary, deciding that anybody that is not a Hungarian is a threat, then you know, Putin talks about religion. In Poland, there is a little bit more also an aspect of looking to Christians. And so it becomes something that is exclusionary, and not only exclusionary, but blaming that minority for something that is wrong. So there are various degrees of it, but partially that is one of the issues of this identification with one group at the expense of another.